Early on after the PSVR headset launch, I wondered if convincing sword fighting games would even be possible in VR. Certainly the Move controllers weren't equipped with the kind of haptics and feedback that would be necessary to replicate the feeling of hitting a solid object. Yet PSVR developers in 2020 were out to prove me wrong, and they did so admirably. Golem, Swordsman VR, Until You Fall, and even Gorn managed to deliver fun sword fighting campaigns. But it wasn't until this week when playing Swords of Gargantua that I realized how much more fun sword fighting can be with friends. My adventures in the Tesseract Abyss started out, let's say, less than thrilling, as I played through the first few levels of the campaign solo. And early on, I was distracted by some of the game's more obvious issues, including how the basic, low-polygon environments and low-res textures resulted in a fairly primitive overall look. There's also a slight learning curve to the controls, but for more reasons than one. I obviously want to look around constantly to keep an eye out for enemies that spawn into the room behind me, but the mandatory head turning can make that a little frustrating. And the dodge mechanic asks you to hold down the move button and then quickly move your head in the direction you want to dash. It's more than a little awkward to learn, and there's no reason why this couldn't have been done just by double tapping the strafe button. So I get it, if you've only played Swords of Gargantua for an hour or so, you might think that it has an uphill battle on its hands. But this is why you can't always trust your first impressions. Because while all my complaints are certainly valid to some degree, you'll quickly lose yourself in the fun, arena-based combat. You'll start off on the first floor with the goal of reaching the boss on level 101, but like any good roguelite, you'll start with some really basic weapons and no abilities. During your run, you'll encounter chances to upgrade your character for that specific run. They're called blessings, and will do everything from improve your movement speed and up your maximum health, to increasing your attack power or potency of healing items. The flip side to blessings, of course, are curses, and once you encounter a curse, it'll stay with you until you die. Most curses are avoidable by simply staying away from purple rings that'll warp you to higher floors, or not using the judgment wheel. But sometimes, it's worth taking on a curse to speed through the game a bit. This is a conversation you'll likely be having with yourself or your 3 co-op friends pretty frequently after completing each floor successfully. If you saw my Swordsman VR review, you'll know that permanent upgrades are one of my favorite things about video games. So the upgrade screen you can access between runs in Gargantua was really exciting for me to discover. After every run, you'll come back here to the lobby and spend time upgrading your HP, attack power, defense, and more, and combine identical weapons to create stronger versions of them. This all results in a feeling that every second I've spent with the game has been meaningful. And these upgrades are going to take forever to max out. I've spent upwards of 7 hours with the game so far, and I've barely scratched the surface. That said, the moment-to-moment gameplay does start to get a little stale once you spend enough time going from floor to floor. Later stages could have benefited from more variety, considering that the whole game uses the same handful of environments, and other than looking different, they don't offer anything new gameplay-wise. Finding new weapons is nice, but if you're like me, you'll probably find the ones that you like the most, like the greatsword you've been seeing for most of this review, and then cherish finding one that's level 3, immediately upgrade it, and stick with it forever. Fortunately, the developers have already started giving us timed events to participate in, which will unlock cool new weapons, like this axe here, that aren't found anywhere else in the game. What I discovered about Swords of Gargantua pretty quickly is that there's more here than meets the eye. Boss fights, enchanting weapons, devising strategies with your friends, and upgrading your abilities makes Gargantua way more fun than I expected it to be. As a single-player game, it can't quite live up to the lofty expectations that Until You Fall has set for sword fighting roguelites, but as a multiplayer game, it's an absolute blast to play.